Hey, noble ones, welcome to Methodon's Academy. You know how sometimes we have reacted to RobWords, a channel that I enjoy watching. Interestingly enough, I reacted to a recent video of his when he was talking about Japanese, and I was a little pedantic about it, which is like a Tuesday for me, of course, since pedantry is my middle name. And I loved it that there were a couple of people that got really pissed. They were like, "You're so rude, you're so stupid, arrogant, who do you think you are? Criticizing someone else's content." And I'm like, you do realize that that's exactly what you're doing? You're criticizing my content in the comments, with the only difference that when I do it to him, I'm polite. And when you're doing it to me, you're rude. Yet you think that yours is fine, but mine isn't. Logics isn't their forte, is it? But anyways, today he made this video, not today, a year ago, he made this video called Why We Should Go Back to Writing in Runes. I like a little bit of runic alphabet myself, so let's have a look.
English looks like this. English looks like this.
Yeah.
But it used to look like this. These ancient letters are called runes, and I think they might be better. Allow me to explain in another RobWords.
Let's see.
Okay, so runes are the alphabet that was used to write down the English language before we started using the alphabet we use now, the alphabet of the Romans.
Yeah.
An alphabet that is
Glory to Rome.
utterly inadequate, lacking letters for some common sounds in our language while having multiple letters for others. It is an alphabet meant for writing out Latin, not English. Whereas this set of characters here is specifically designed to efficiently represent the sounds of the English language.
Or should we say Anglo-Saxon, in fact. It is badass, though.
Or more accurately, Old English as it was back then, over 1,000 years ago.
Exactly.
But I think it could be used for the English we speak today.
Well,
Now, before you dismiss this as just another one of Rob's silly alphabetical schemes, just hang on a moment, because I am in good company in exploring this idea. This is a beautiful copy of The Hobbit, the masterpiece by author and linguist J.R.R. Tolkien. His fascination with Old English and the language of the Vikings, Old Norse, is interwoven throughout this book and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Not
interesting. He says Tolkien. Is it Tolkien or is it Tolkien? Have I been saying it wrong for my entire life? Please don't let me know in the comments.
just in the names of people and places in the text, but also in the illustrations drawn by the man himself.
Yeah, look at that.
They are littered with runes. Look at the ones on this map. This is the written form of Dwarvish, but it's actually just Anglo-Saxon runes. And they don't spell out some mystical message in a made-up or long-dead language. This is modern English. Stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks, and the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole. So it can be done. Runes work for the language we speak today. Tolkien proved it. But before we decide if runic
You know, he's starting to convince me here. I don't know, man. This could work out.
writing is right for the modern age, there is a whole lot that we need to understand
spelling,
first about how runes were used in the past and how they've been more recently abused. But let's start with where runes came from and why they look the way they look. To do that, we have to go to Scandinavia and way back in time to even before the age of the Vikings, although we will get round to them, I promise. The oldest surviving runes date from around the 2nd century, and they're concentrated around southern Scandinavia, so that is runologists' best guess at where they were invented.
Of course, for what we know so far, I actually took a class in, it was Philologia Germanica, so it was Germanic philology, but they had a whole section at university about the runes and writing methods of Germanic tribes and whatnot. And it was absolutely fascinating. We'll see if some of the information overlaps, although again, I'm talking about 20 years ago.
However, you know, it might just be that more runic inscriptions from there survived than elsewhere because of a tradition in the area of burying things in bogs. Bogs are a great way of preserving objects that would have otherwise perished elsewhere. The style of rune from back then is the one you're most likely to have come across. This is the runic alphabet used from at least the 2nd century to the 7th century, and it's known as the Elder or Older Futhark. In much the way that our word alphabet comes from the Greek names, so the first 2 letters of our alphabet, alpha and beta, the Futhark is named for the sounds made by its first 6 characters. F, U, F, A, R, K. And the rest of these...
I disagree with his pronunciation of the R because he did the English R. I think it was rolled. I think it would be R, Futhark. That's what I believe.
24 runes, each make their own sound too. You know, one of the things I find amazing looking at the runes next to their Roman alphabet equivalents is that so many of them match up. Look at the B letter and the R letter and the H and the S. There are too many of these pairings to be coincidental.
Of course.
And that's because it isn't coincidental. The fact that this alphabet from the northern reaches of Europe has symbols in common with writing systems from the continent's southern limits is a reminder of how much more connected the world was 2,000 years ago than we often think of it as being, or at least than I think of it.
I appreciate that he's using AD and BC, by the way. He's just got 100 points with me without the Common Era nonsense.
As being anyway. These alphabets were in sufficient contact with each other to influence one another. Of course, the runes look like funky, pointy, stylized versions of their Latin equivalents because the Elder Futhark is composed entirely with straight lines. Why is that? Well, the answer is simple. Because it makes these characters easier to carve. Because that's really the only way in which they were used.
So they would use them on like stones. They would use them on wooden objects, weapons, shields. You could write them on statues, so you can use them. You can carve runes on both as media. You would use wood, stone, textile. I'm not sure actually. We'll see because I don't remember that. I mean, again, it's been 20 years, guys.
The Scandinavians of this period are not big writers. Epic storytellers, sure, but not fans of putting pen to paper, or rather quill to vellum. But what they did do was inscribe things. They would carve, scrape, or bash these symbols into objects made of wood, metal, or stone.
Metal, yeah,
like
of course.
This incredible memorial stone, said to bear Norway's oldest last will and testament, that just blew my mind when I visited Oslo's Historical Museum. It's from around 400 AD. These runes are also used to mark ownership of property or to claim credit for handiwork. On this replica of a 5th century drinking horn, it says, Ek Hlawagastis Hortias Horna Tawido. I,
Appreciate the trilling R.
Hlawagastis, son of Holt, made the horn. Or something along those lines. It's written in Proto-Norse, the precursor to Old Norse. Runes are also used to label things. Combs have been found that just say comb on them. And they're used to decorate weaponry and jewellery, like this coin-like disc called a bactiate that just has the word ale inscribed onto it.
Priorities in
life. I love
life.
it. I want it. I want it. And then I also have to mention magic, although I'm not going to dwell on it because so far as I can see there isn't a huge amount of evidence of runes being used for mystical purposes at the time that we're talking about. It is primarily a writing system.
It is more of a modern thing, and in fact it has nothing to do with historic. The idea of using runes for divination is a modern thing, just so we're clear.
However, the Roman historian Tacitus, who wrote a lot about his encounters with Germanic tribes, wrote in the 1st century AD about a curious divination ritual that he observed, in which he said villagers would break off the branch of a fruit tree and slice it into strips. They mark these by certain signs and throw them, as random chance would have it, onto a white cloth. Then a state priest prays to the gods and, gazing to the heavens, picks up 3 separate strips and reads their meaning from the marks scored on them. It's thought those fortune-telling marks might well have been runes. Now, one of the motivations behind this video is to sort of reclaim runes, because without a doubt, particularly over the past century, they've been abused.
Germany.
They've been adopted by far-right groups all over the world, most notably the Nazis, based upon ridiculous, manufactured ideas about what they mean. And I'm going to get into all of that later because it's important. You may have seen that just recently a far-right party won a state election here in Germany for the first time since the end of the Second World War. But your understanding of why that happened may well have been influenced by the specific outlet that gives you your news.
Ground News, that's a sponsor. I'm going to call it. I was surprised because I'm like, usually he's not political. So I wonder, I mean, I know he clearly leans left, but as long as it's moderately, it doesn't bother me. The one thing that I noticed, though, is that I was like, what is he going into politics? No, it's a sponsor, and I call it now. It's Ground News.
However, with Ground News
is good.
You get the full picture.
Yeah.
On that story alone, it's pulled together over 500 sources from around the world and across the political spectrum, allowing us to compare the coverage. For example, you can see some right-leaning websites blaming left-leaning members of Germany's governing coalition for the rise of the far right, saying citizens have had enough, whereas outlets on the left stress what it all means for Germany's minorities, calling it a punch to the country. Now, I've worked with Ground News for about a year now because I think what they do is important. Plus, I find their interest pages, like the ones for Germany, the UK, and the US that I use, make it really easy to stay on top of the stories that matter to me. It can do the same for you. Use my special link, ground.news/RobWords, or scan this QR code to get 40% off unlimited access like me. I'm
glad I didn't cover the QR code.
And stay fully informed with Ground News. Thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. So far we've just looked at the Elder Futhark, but it's with a later incarnation of the runic alphabet that, from an English speaker's perspective, things start to get really interesting. From the 7th century onwards, in Britain, a new runic alphabet is starting to be used, a tweaked and extended version of the Elder Futhark, designed to better suit the language of the Anglo-Saxons, who'd been living there for a couple of hundred years by this point. That language was what we now call Old English.
Of course.
And the new alphabet?
If you're interested in Old English, by the way, particularly from a Christian perspective, I actually have a video dedicated to the recreation of how Our Father, the prayer, was actually pronounced in Old English, in Anglo-Saxon, which was, and I'm glad that he's using the word, by the way, because one thing, since he mentioned about some nonsense on the right, I'd like to underline some nonsense on the left as well for kind of balance a little bit, and that is the fact that apparently there are several universities in the UK that are saying now that the expression Anglo-Saxon should be banned because they say, oh, it's now connected to far right ideas and that kind of stuff, and it's nonsense. There's nothing wrong with saying Anglo-Saxon, and it is wrong to try and remove it and replace it out of a whim. It's nothing. I don't know, this was from a year ago, so I wonder if he would still use the word Anglo-Saxon today. If he does, he has my respect. If he doesn't, he loses points with me. That's how it is. It doesn't mean that I'm automatically going to be like, oh, then he's this or that. Like, you know how these days you just say one thing and you're either a communist or you're a bigot or it's like there is no in between. There is not like, well, maybe I disagree with this, but generally speaking, I value the person, right? Like I might disagree with this position, whether it be left or right, or like for a centrist, extreme centrist. But I mean, it's nice to like look at the people, right? But we don't. We're very tribalistic. Anyways, I was saying I have a dedicated video on all the different passages from Anglo-Saxon to medieval English to modern English. So if you're interested, I'll put a link after a link to his video, which is my prassi when it comes to reaction videos. So I give priority to his link. But there will be also a link in the description pinned comment to my own video on Anglo-Saxon if you want.
Was the Futhorc. Like the Elder Futhark, the Futhorc was named after the first 6 characters, but in this adapted version of the alphabet, they were no longer the same. The Germanic dialects in Britain and also in Frisia on the continent, where the Futhorc was also being used, were different to other dialects. English has always been a bit of a pain in the arse. So, for example, to take into account Old English's weird vowel system, 2 new vowel runes were added. Anyway, it's this Anglo-Frisian Futhorc, these Anglo-Saxon runes that Tolkien used for Dwarvish, and that I think we could use today. Okay, so how is this better than what we've currently got? Well, all right. Number 1, it has this guy. A single letter representing what we currently spell out with 2 TH. This rune is called Thorn, and I have lauded it many times on this channel because it actually survived the transition to the Latin alphabet and continued to be used in English until as recently as the 14th century. And
we'll have to find a way to divide, maybe with a little annotation over it or under it, the difference between the vocal version and the non-vocal version. So th as in think, as opposed to the as in mother, because they're both spelled with a th in English, which sometimes can be annoying if you really want to know, and maybe you don't have direct exposure to native speakers. And of course, sometimes it's irrelevant. You can say with and with, they're both fine, but you can't say mother and you can't say I think. So perhaps with a little annotation be a good idea.
Indeed, it's still used in the Icelandic alphabet today, something that brought me endless geeky excitement while I was there recently. English, like Icelandic, needs this letter more than any other European language.
I agree.
And that is why I am,
well,
hardcore Thorn.
That's pretty cool right there. It's a merch. Very nice. I hope he sells it well. Why more than any other European language, though? Because Greek has that distinction between th and the. And in fact, so does Spanish. So I disagree with that statement. That's very Anglo-centric, isn't it?
Reason number 2 why this alphabet is better is this rune called Win. It makes the W sound without resorting to the bodge that we currently have, which is literally using a double U or double V.
Yeah.
This one also survived into Middle English until the printing
press
killed it off. I think we need it back. That is why I am also
Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Win. Reason number 3.
Man, I need to learn how he plays this merch. He's definitely better than me.
Why the Futhark is better than our current alphabet is this letter, which represents the ng sound, something we currently write with an N and a G. But when writing, we're using those two letters together all of the time. Why not save space and time with just one letter?
I agree.
Reason number 4 is that the Futhark's 9 vowel characters are much better equipped to represent the 20-odd vowel sounds in English than the pathetic 6 that we're currently having to get by with. And number 5, the Futhark only has one k letter instead of our current 3, which, let's face it, is ridiculous. Honestly, I could go on. For example, a further delightful aspect of the Futhark is that every letter has a name, and that name isn't just a noise like F or L or E. It's a full word with a meaning, charming meanings like thorn, as I already mentioned, but also oak and ash and yew, like feor, which means wealth, and win, which means joy.
That's actually pretty nice. Again, he's building a very good case.
And also this one that's called gift. And not only do these names bring these letters to life, but they also tell you how to pronounce them. They all start with the sound that the letter makes, all except for 2, which are sounds that couldn't appear at the start of words in Anglo-Saxon.
It's a bit like what you do when you say be as in boy, but all put together, right?
Like ung. We know about the names of the runes because of poems from back then that listed them, or in the case of this one, give a series of riddles, each one leading to the name of a rune. So the names are charming, it has a better set of letters, and it looks kick-ass.
It does.
Does the Futhark work? Are these runes fit for purpose, fit for everyday use? It's a fair question because so far we've only heard of them being used for the odd carving here or there. But elsewhere and during the same time period, runes were being used much more broadly, and until as recently as the 18th century in some places. For more on that, let's cross to the Nordics and to me on holiday there last week. Rob. Thanks, future me. Yes, welcome to Oslo, the capital of Norway. We should talk about the use of runes here in Scandinavia because it was much more extensive than it ever was in England to represent Old English, where in England it was mainly used to mark objects to show ownership, craftsmanship, or for a dedication. Scandinavian inscriptions could be a lot longer and could cover a whole range of other purposes too. We partially know this because of an amazing discovery that was made here in Norway, actually in Bergen though, not here in Oslo.
It's going to be interesting to see, because usually I'm more focused on the discoveries that have to do with helmets, shields, and full-on funerary kits of warriors. So this could be an interesting one.
Back in 1955, a fire ripped through the city's beautiful waterfront. But though it was a disaster, it led to the most significant runic find of the 20th century. 670 pieces of wood carved with runes from the so-called younger Futharks,
I'm glad they weren't burnt down.
which are the later simplified versions of the elder Futhark that we talked about already. It's actually the versions that were used by the Vikings. And these hundreds of objects show just how mundane, just how day-to-day the use of runes could be. There's a massive online database of all the runic inscriptions ever found in Scandinavia, and you can find all the inscriptions from the Bergen fire there. And they include simple little things like a simple prayer. There's ones that just say Ave Maria on them. There are declarations of love. And there's also undoubtedly my absolute favourite one, which is an apparent scolding of someone who has spent too long down the pub. It was found in the ruins of a tavern. And it says, Geether says, you should go home. Now that's funny enough, right? Someone being told to go home. But what I find extra funny is that there is an accompanying inscription, clearly carved by a different hand, that is completely incomprehensible. It's thought that it's probably the reply from whoever was being told to come home. It would appear that they were so far gone that they couldn't inscribe a decent reply. So though it doesn't seem like runes were really used day to day in England for Old English, there is a precedent for them being the daily means of communication here in Scandinavia. Interesting. Back to you, future Rob.
Excellent editing, by the way. Okay, so there is this massive check here, the whole part about Austrian Painters Fan Club, let's just call him, in the 1940s. And then he has modern rune usage and resources. So I'll leave these three if you're interested in it, so that you can click the link in the description of something to watch, so I don't react to the entire thing. But in general, this was very interesting. I have to say, a guy has got a case. So if you do that, let me know so I can start learning the runes again. I say again because I did study them at university, but then again, it wasn't my main focus. So I forgot almost everything about it because I focused on Japanese and Mandarin instead. And then the whole history stuff took over. But do let me know if he succeeds. And then we start writing in runic alphabet again there so that I will pick it up. Brush it up, if you will. Thank you for watching, and thank you, RobWords, for the content. Have a good one.